Pseudepigrapha. I hate this word. I hate spelling it. I hate the process of typing it, and I hate saying it. My least favorite part of Angels and the Pseudepigrapha by Bradley Matson is that now I need to do a review where I say Pseudepigrapha. This book by Matson has one goal in mind, but can serve two purposes for those who are interested in learning more about the Bible's teaching on angels. First, Matson seeks to determine if the teaching on angels, present in the Pseudepigrapha, is in line with the teaching in the Bible. And to do so, he uses the books of Enoch and Jubilee as his test case from the Pseudepigrapha. This is the goal of the book, to compare or contrast the teachings on angels in the Pseudepigrapha with the teaching on angels in the Old and New Testament. But in order to do this, the book also serves a second function. Maston walks through the Bible's teaching on angels and demons, going from passage to passage in both the Old and the New Testament, in order to show what we can learn about the heavenly hosts in the Bible, both those innocent and fallen. This makes this book a really good resource to see a collection of all or the major passages on angels in the Bible in order. Now, I do believe Maston succeeded in his goal of comparing the Pseudepigrapha to the Bible, and also at the same time provided another good resource for the church on angelology in the process. Now, let me tell you what I did and didn't like about this helpful tool in our study on angels. Welcome to Rev Reads, your home for book reviews from the perspective of a pastor. If you're new to the channel and want to discover more spiritual and biblical books, please subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with the most current reviews. And if you're a regular to this channel, remember, if you like this video, if you share it with others on social media, it will help them to discover the work of Bradley Matson. First, what is the Pseudepigrapha? It's a collection of writings, most likely written in the time period between the Old and the New Testament, and these writers are written by what we would call counterfeit authors. What I mean by counterfeit is that Enoch didn't really write Enoch. Abraham didn't write the Testament of Abraham. I kind of see Pseudepigrapha as the first version of fan fiction. They are like the original Left Behind series. And while Left Behind was intended for dispensationalists, the Pseudepigrapha was intended for the Jewish audience who was awaiting the coming of the Messiah. And while the Pseudepigrapha isn't inspired in any way, and it's not always correct, what it does reveal is important information about what the Jews believed during the time between the Old and New Testament. And just like Left Behind, this isn't scripture. In the same way you can understand what dispensationalists believe about some things through reading the Left Behind series, you can understand what people during the period between the Old and New Testament believed about angels and some other topics. And I think one thing Matson does well is to show that while the Pseudepigrapha presents a lot of information that is most likely not true, such as the lists of the names of angels and a lot of other details, it doesn't outright contradict the Bible. Instead, what it's doing is it's adding details that the Bible did not provide. And this ends up allowing us to see a few helpful things from the Pseudepigrapha. It shows us the importance of the title Watchers from the perspective of the Jews. I think Watchers is a legitimate title for angels, even if we don't use it much today. Second, it also shows us the Jewish view of Genesis 6, 1-4 on the sons of God, that Jews during this time period believed that they were angels, and the Nephilim were a gigantic race of half men, half angels, and demons are the souls of those Nephilim who died. Now, this provides strong evidence that the sons of God in Genesis 6, 1-4 should be seen as angels, as it appears Peter and Jude also follow the Pseudepigrapha in that view. Now, Maston does a really good job of stacking the Bible up next to Enoch and Jubilees. I really appreciate his emphasis that another thing the Pseudepigrapha demonstrates is that we should not pursue contact with angelic or demonic beings or possess an overly large fascination, or obsession with them. Now, they do hold an important role in God's story, so we should study about angels, learn about them, the roles that angels and demons have in this world, but they should still be kept at a minor role in comparison to the Lord of hosts. Now, one of the things I loved the most about this book is the format. I love how he just takes the reader through book after book while giving us simple explanations of what each book or passage says on angels and demons. One of my favorite parts was the charts that he has at the end of each chapter, which shows all the places where angels or demons were referenced in that section of the Bible. And I think those charts could be a huge tool to help people in their own personal study on angels and demons in the Bible. Now, the first section of the book on the Old Testament was my favorite. Oddly enough, the section on the New Testament is the weakest, but I don't think that that's Maston's fault because it actually illustrates an important point. This book is all about understanding angels as God's people have understood angels in the past. And one thing Maston is trying to demonstrate is that from Genesis to Revelation, the Bible has a consistent view on angels and demons throughout. That things are developed as we go along in the Bible, but nothing is contradicted from period to period. And why this is important is that it makes a strong case for an Israelite origin for our understanding of angels, and that Israelites were not adopting the views of other nations in order to understand these spiritual beings. This then makes the final section on the New Testament the weakest because it's not adding a ton of information, it's really confirming what we already know on angels that was established in the Old Testament. And that's actually a really good thing that we see a consistent view on angels throughout the Bible. And here's what I didn't like about the book, and it's really two relatively small things. One thing is, I am going to die on a hill that says Isaiah 14 does not refer to Satan. I think it is a bad take to have Isaiah 14 refer to Satan. I think you need to rip it out of the context. Maston says that this chapter clearly refers to the king of Babylon, which I agree with. So the chapter shouldn't even be in this book. Anyway, Bradley talks about how it does point to Satan's fall, and I'm not a big fan of that. Most people watching this video will probably agree with Bradley and not with me, but I'm fine with it. The second thing I didn't like about the book is that he never interacted with Michael Heiser's work on angels and demons. Well, I personally don't agree with a lot of Heiser's work, but right now he is so influential, and he does a lot of stuff with the Pseudepigrapha that I think right now, if you're writing a book about angels and the Pseudepigrapha, I think it is responsible to interact with Heiser's writings, and I'm a little disappointed that he didn't do that at all in this book. But for me, moving forward, if I need to look up something on angels and demons, I'm probably going to go to Maston's book first, simply because it's so well organized, it's presented really good in order to see what the Bible simply says about angels. And then after that, I'll probably see what Heiser says, because he's willing to look outside the box in an interesting way, even if I'm not always going to agree with him. But if you're at all curious about the Pseudepigrapha, or want a good reference for the Bible's teaching on angels, this book would be a good reference for you to own. It's even going to be a good book for you to read and not to just simply collect dust on your shelf. And I also think this book is important for anyone who wants to know more about Genesis 6, 1 through 4, and how Peter and Jude relate to that passage in the New Testament. And Lord willing, this is going to be the last time for a long time that I have to say pseudepigrapha.